Well, hello and welcome to the Start Being Visible podcast with me, Mildred Talabi. We are going to have a really great session tonight because this episode of Start Being Visible is a guest episode. So, in just a moment, I am going to introduce you to my special guest for this episode of Start Being Visible. But before we get to it, you are watching this live either on LinkedIn or you're watching this live on Instagram. Now, wherever you're watching from, I want you to say hello in the comments because this is live and interactive. It means that you can actually get to participate in today's session. You can get to ask me questions, you can get to give me your feedback. You can get to ask my guests questions as we go along. So this is why I love this live and interactive version because I get to interact with you. So the very first place I want you to start is to say hello in the comments and let me know who you are and where in the world you are tuning in from. And if this is your first time watching Start Being Visible, welcome, welcome. I am so pleased to have you here. Now, this show is all about how you can start being visible. Now, what do I mean by that? It means if for you, and I'm speaking to the ladies here, it means that you get the opportunity on this show to learn, to be inspired, to be encouraged, to be motivated, to step out of the shadows and into the limelight in your own work life. So it's about taking center stage of your owning your skills, owning your expertise, owning everything that you've been, all the fabulousness that you've been created to be and to do. So this is the show that allows you to do that. So I do solo conversations and I also bring amazing guest conversations like the one that I'm going to have today with my very awesome guest who is here in the studio. So if you are just tuning in, say hello in the comments, whether you're on Instagram or you're on LinkedIn, say hello to us. And then we're just going to dive right into today's session. Now, my guest, who I am about to bring onto the stage, she is a truly, truly awesome woman. I've watched her progress for quite a while on Instagram and then LinkedIn, and we'll talk about that in just a second. But her name is Hannah Awonuga. Now, Hannah is considered one of the most inspirational and influential diversity, equity and inclusion practitioners in the UK. She has many awards under her belt in this area. She's a thought leader, she's a speaker, and she recently joined Knight Frank, the global real estate consultancy, as the group head of diversity, equity and inclusion. Now, prior to this, Hannah was the Global DEI Director at Barclays Bank, where she started her career in banking at just 17 years old before she transitioned into diversity and inclusion. Now, today, Hannah serves as a non-executive director for the UK government membership body, Progress Together, which has been set up to increase socio-economic diversity at senior leadership level across the UK financial services. Now, that's pretty big, pretty impressive stuff she's doing there, you know? And if you follow Hannah on LinkedIn, where she is a recognized LinkedIn top voice with over 62,000 followers, you're going to see that she is passionate and vocal about the topics of racial equality, gender equality, social mobility, diversity, and inclusion. And we'll get into some of that in today's conversation. But without any further ado, as they say, please help me welcome to the stage the very lovely Hannah Awonuga. Hello, Hannah.
Hello, hello, hello. How are you?
I am good, and it's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Now, I know that you're super busy, and I know that Hannah literally just walked into the door from a busy day at work. So this is a real privilege to have you here with us today.
No worries at all. No worries at all. Lovely to be here. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I can absolutely hear you just fine. And audience, if you can hear us properly, just let us know in the comments, just so we know that all side of things is working very well over there. So we are gonna get into it today. But Hannah, listen, right? So Hannah, you and my brother-in-law Toby go way back, you know, way back. So I sent him a message and I said, "Hey Toby, I'm gonna be talking to Hannah tomorrow. What should I ask her?" Right? And here's what he said. It's so funny. He said, "Can you ask her if she remembers my mom's jollof and if she loves my mom's jollof rice?"
Absolutely loved. Antibuki's jollof rice, best. Well, let me be careful before I offend my mother or my husband. But one of the best, absolutely.
I would totally have to agree with that. I'm like, of all the questions in the world, you can ask this wonderful young lady, but the jollof debate is a big one. So I'm glad we sorted that. And I agree with you, by the way. Mum-in-law was the best at the jollof rice, But okay, so listen, your CV, Hannah, is quite remarkable for someone that is still so young. I mean, there's so much that you've done and you've gotten to a really high level in your career. Would you describe yourself as ambitious?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd absolutely describe myself as ambitious. I think it manifests in many different ways, though. I think there's a level of ambition, but also if you think about it from a socioeconomic perspective, there's also that kind of wants to succeed, want to give your children what you didn't have, want to make sure that you are in a position that affords you the opportunities that maybe you didn't have when you're growing up. So there's ambition to want to progress and be successful, but then there's also this kind of this almost recognition of wanting to make sure that you have a better life and a better life for your children as well. So that there's that as well.
And I know that because you're quite public about this in terms of that whole having a better life, because you started life at a young age, kind of living independently. I know this is part of your bio. From the age of 15 is where you started. Can you talk to us a little bit more about the scenario around you growing up? How was that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Families are interesting, right? You don't get to choose your family, and the dynamics of family and also can be quite interesting. I describe it as the battle of the cultures, right? My parents are like strict Nigerian people, and they brought me up in London, Bermondsey, and so actually that kind of battle of two cultures was really interesting. And back in the day, maybe there was not as much, today, we communicate a lot with our kids. We want to understand. I don't think that was really there at that in kind of their in that era, should I say. And so at the age of 15, my family household broke down, and I found myself homeless. And then, I started my life quite early. So at 16, I walked into the Halifax and got a job as a cashier, spent 1 year at Halifax. At 16, 17 years old, joined Barclays. Yeah.
Okay. And at this point, you were, because I know you were born in Bermondsey, and then you lived in Derby for a while, and then you came back to South London. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so you were in South London at this time. Now, South London has its reputation. It's not, can be a little bit rough. So did you experience some of that roughness growing up?
Yeah, of course, right. Like in school, and as a young person trying to find yourself. My son is going to be 16, and so I'm almost seeing what I must have been like, right? And so just them at that school time where you're still at that young age trying to find yourself, and you go to a school that actually people from all different backgrounds are there, and so you see gang crime, you see all of that type of thing, and it's easy to fall into anything like that, right? The people you hang around, the people you're with, and so it's about choices. And just luckily for me, actually, that I recognized quite quickly that if I didn't do something productive, if I didn't try and force myself out of that kind of living in a council estate, growing up in a council estate, going to a mixed kind of state school, if I didn't make the choices to kind of move myself out of that, then it's easy to stay there. It's easy to kind of immerse yourself in that, and that leads to various different walks of life. But I kind of quickly knew that actually, do you know what? If I'm not going to go to college, I probably should get a job. And at the time, when people say, what did you want to be when you grow up? Like, I wanted to work in the bank. That was when I was so young. That was it. So actually, that became a dream for me. And so as soon as I was able to kind of be of age, that is the path I took. And at the time, I was a cashier, and so it wasn't about a career. It was about getting a job. It was about actually how you need to survive, and you need to find yourself something that's going to help sustain you. And it was through that actually then you start to think about, there's other roles you can do in this job, and you can grow. And there's a lot of things you don't know. I've spoken a lot, even today and yesterday, around this kind of psychological contract that you have in corporate spaces, where there's loads of things that are kind of, if you don't know about them, or if your family doesn't, if you don't come from a professional background, actually you won't know. I make the joke, I've heard it a few years ago, where somebody said, look, they used to be asked to go for coffee and they used to be like, I don't drink coffee, but actually not recognizing that coffee invite is an opportunity for you to sell yourself, to show what you're capable of, to meet senior leaders. Just all of them things that actually, if you don't come from them backgrounds, or if you're not in them networks, you don't actually know. And so, yeah, school was not tough. It was okay. I had a really good head teacher at the time, who kind of helped me navigate and kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. And then when I had to make a few choices, I feel like I made some of the more sensible choices that have led me to here.
So at the time, and by the way, I can totally relate to that, going for coffee and non-stop tea in the workplace. When I was started out in the work, I'm like, I don't even drink tea. I mean, what's the non-stop tea making stuff, So, but yeah, if you're not from there, like you said, it's kind of like a culture you have to learn and adapt to over time. And clearly you've done well at it, as well as other things for where you are in your career. And we will talk about that a bit more. But so at this time, so you're 16, you're living on your own, and you kind of had this choice of, do I make this choice? Do I make that other choice? What made you make the right choice? Because it would have been just as easy for you to go down another route, but what was driving you? I mean, I'm assuming your parents weren't around at the time to kind of guide you in that decision. So it was all kind of independent. What made you make those choices?
I think so. There's a point where it turns from, so you said I'm really ambitious at the beginning, right? And actually, is it ambition? It is ambition now, and it has been for a number of years. But at some point, it was sink or swim. And so at that point, it was sink or swim. And it was kind of like, either you're going to sink because, you're young, you don't have anybody around you, no mentor, no sponsor, no kind of family support, or you're going to swim and you're going to make your way. And so there was no choice for me. It was like, you have to find work, you have to find something to do, you have to keep yourself busy. And so because I had this aspiration of working in the bank, it just felt like, well, I'm going to try and go and work in the bank. And I tell this story many times, but, I walked into the bank at the age of 16 and I was wearing a hooded jacket, a pair of jeans, trainers. That was to my interview. And, the lady who interviewed me, she was awesome. And she said, look, Hannah, I really like you, but go and get yourself a pair of trousers and a shirt and come back for the second interview. And so actually that piece of advice that probably felt like really nothing to her changed my life, right? Because that little piece of advice I took, I went, got a shirt, got a pair of trousers, went to the second interview. They offered me a job and I started at the Halifax. And so actually it wasn't about ambition at that point. It was about, sink or swim. And if I knew I wanted to swim, I had to get myself into a job. And it wasn't, I need to find a career. It was, I need to find a job. It was not until I got in there and recognized the kind of the different roles you can do, and actually how people live, and the earning potential, and the change that I wanted to be, that I realized actually I could build a career in banking.
So jumping forward, and then we'll come back a bit. So you said you had this lady who saw you come in with your hoodie and jeans, and she's like, I'm going to take a chance on you, essentially, right? Do you find that you've been the lady on that other side of the table for other young women, maybe men too, in your career along the years? Have you found yourself like looking at somebody who reminded you of yourself, and you've kind of taken the chance on them and supported them in their career?
Yeah, absolutely. I've always felt that as soon as I became in a position to be somebody, to be a mentor, to be a sponsor, to give people opportunities, that I would like to be able to give people the same opportunity that lady gave to me. And I'm really rooted in that. I'm really, really rooted in, because ultimately, if it wasn't for that one opportunity, I wouldn't be here today ultimately. So I often think about how and what ways I can do to just support somebody. It doesn't always need to be giving a person a job. It could be giving people advice. It could be talking to somebody about how they navigate a relationship at work or navigate a situation that they're dealing with. I think that's what really led me to D&I, because actually I suppose I kind of started to look around and notice that people out there, I didn't see nobody that looked like me. I didn't see nobody that sounded like me or came from where I came from. And so you start to think, well, why is that? And you start to ask questions and probe. And when people say that there's just no talent out there, which is absolutely ridiculous, you start to challenge that a little bit and say, well, actually, no, that's not right. Are you looking in the right places? Are you speaking to the right people? Are you in the right circles? Are you making effort? Are you making intention about the decisions you make around where you find talent? And so that's kind of where I really found D&I, is looking at, actually there were not many people that looked like me anywhere. And that's why the kind of the race and ethnicity conversation is a little bit different, because representation is low everywhere in every sector in the world. And so, yeah, that's what led me to DEI. But naturally, I became a branch manager at the age of 21. I was an area manager at the age of 23. Naturally, in them leadership roles, I started to hire people myself, right? Like, if no one else is doing it, I'm going to do it. And now, some of them people that I've just gave a chance are flying in very senior roles, doing amazing stuff. And so that's what.
How did you learn? And as Carl put it in the comments, he said, someone once told me you get more promotions in a pub than in a workplace, so about, in relation to your point about going for coffees, etc. How did you learn to navigate the corporate world? What made you, when did you come to that understanding that, okay, if I'm going to progress, these are what I need to do. I might need to drink coffees, I might play golf, whatever it is that, whatever the game is. How did you learn the game?
I don't know if I've even learned it yet. I don't know if I've learned the game. I suppose what at the time when you're younger, maybe you need to learn the game. Now I'm just authentically who I am. And so I suppose now I'm more bolder, more outspoken, more curious. I suppose at the earlier years of my career, it might have just been by observation, and actually speaking to people and putting yourself out there and asking questions and really looking around and being attentive to what you can see, because it's around you. It's just that it is all around you. And I was having this conversation with a really interesting colleague today about, it's around you, but you don't see it unless you know it's around you, right? Mm-hmm. So, you could hear that something's going on. You can see two people walking off for coffees, and, you can see, and actually, if you don't know, if you're not cognizant to that, then you don't know that there's a game that's being played, or that there's unspoken, unwritten kind of rules. That's why mentors and sponsors are really critical, because actually you should have sponsors and mentors, and they shouldn't always look like you. Like, get people that surround yourself. It's the D&I conversation, right? Surround yourself with diversity of people. So actually you get diverse perspectives. And I think even Black people need to do that. Even ethnically diverse people need to do that. Women need to do that. Because for the first early years, I didn't play the game and my career was quite slow. And then when I realized, I said to somebody, I want to progress. And I said, well, have you spoken to this person? I was like, well, why would I speak to them? And then they were like, because actually that's where you want to be. So you should speak to them and find out how they got there. And I thought, oh, wow, actually, yeah, you're so right. Just through them conversations, this whole notion of get your head down and do work hard actually isn't real. It's not real.
Yeah.
You have to be able to get your head down, do work, be excellent, and not excellent, over exacerbated excellent, not the excellent that we have to, achieve, that overachievement just to be middle ground, but be excellent in your work, so that actually your work is excellent, but then also you've got great networks, you've got great sponsors, you've got great mentors, and so you position yourself in a great place.
And I'm so glad you mentioned that whole point about keeping your head down and getting on with the work. It's something that so many of the women that I work with in the line of work that I do in LinkedIn coaching, etc., they struggle with in the corporate world, because it's kind of like, for a lot of women, it's that whole idea of just keep your head down, keep working, your hard work will speak for you, you know. And this is where that whole visibility piece comes into, and we're going to talk about this later, but it's like, actually, your work doesn't have a voice if you don't give it voice, you know. So yeah, it sounds like this is something that you learn, you know, at that point in your career, and kind of adjusted to. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. I think you grow and you learn naturally, but it's about what do you how do you learn the things that are going to add value, and what do you place on value. So if visibility is important to you, then absolutely that's what you put your, you know, if promotion or connections and networks, finding out what's important to you and then leaning into that, and then finding people who are already in that space doing that. Because often also we sometimes think we have to do it all on our own. Have this notion of, you know, you just got to get on with it. But actually, I don't believe that. I think that if you really want to go far, you need to go with others, potentially others who have done it before you, potentially others who are also on that journey, who are going to champion you and push you and drive you and challenge you.
Absolutely. So do you know, the funny thing is, so we've talked about your corporate career, and there is more in there I want to talk about, but I just want to go to, because I know you had a business. I don't know if I don't believe you still have it. So Rarity London, was it Rarity? And that's actually how I first came to know of you, through Rarity. And I used to follow you on Instagram, and you used to do this corporate clothing. I was like, she's got style, you know. And it was just the clothes and everything. It was just awesome. So how did you kind of, I know you're still in this banking career, and then you kind of had this side hustle with Rarity London as you're still going. Talk to us about the balance. What made you set up Rarity? What is it doing now? And how did you balance both?
Yeah, absolutely. It's so fascinating, because actually it's such a business is evolution, like it's in evolution, right? So you start one place and you may find yourself in a completely different place, which is what happened with me. So Rarity had many iterations, but ultimately the problem statement with it was I didn't find anywhere that did like nice corporate wear, you know, like it's going into the office every day, and like, you know, I do like to like dress up and wear heels and wear dresses and stuff. I just felt like I couldn't find anything that would fit me, so I thought, well, maybe I'll just make my own. And so no fashion design experience, you know, but like just kind of started to become passionate about it, and also thought, you know, I've got a day job and it's really intense. I really enjoy it, but what's for me? You know, what can I do that's for me? And so I did that, and I went to I did a pattern course. I sourced fabrics. I started to design. I made 5 different pieces. And so when I launched, because it was workwear, I was kind of giving work career advice as part of the caption. So I'd post the dress, and then I'd talk about kind of like how to show up for interviews, or how to stakeholder manage, or anything like that. And then I realized that people were coming to me more for the career advice than for the dresses. So, you know, rather than saying, oh, that looks like a nice piece of kit, how much is it? They were like, oh, that was really interesting what you said about career, about interviews, because, you know, I'm having this challenge at the moment. And so I started to post more on careers, because I thought, well, okay, there's something here about, you know, how people need support. Sorry, let me just put my job on. How people need support in their careers. And so I started doing more around starting to talk about careers, and like giving career advice, and you know how to get promotions, how to speak to like leaders about development. And so then I did a career coaching course, because I was getting people asking me, well, can you support me with my career? Can you support me through that journey? And so I did a career coaching course to just have a qualification and give me kind of the theoretical knowledge on career coaching. And then Rarity London evolved, and it evolved into a career coaching organization. I did that for about 2 years, maybe 3. And again, really, really enjoyed it. But as you know, as a coach, it's very time consuming. And so I was finding that I was working 9 to 5, and then I was doing coaching probably 6:30 to 8. I have 3 children, or at the time I had 2 children. And so I felt like I couldn't give the coaching kind of all it needed. Like I couldn't give my kind of coachees and etc. And so I wrote a career journal as my kind of gift to early careers. And so it was a 200-page hardback journal called My Career Guide. That was a 20-page guide to building your career. And that for me was just a way to kind of help these kind of early careers people just kind of get started. I was describing it today in a focus group as your little black book, you know, like what are the rules of the road as you progress in your career. And so My Career Guide, I launched it, had a really good launch. It was awesome. And you know, I sold 200 copies around the world. It was awesome. But again, the business kind of evolved a little bit. And now we're in 2019, 2020, and George Floyd kind of happened, was murdered. And from then, the world all of a sudden realized that racism existed. And so then, you know, I was started to talk about it because I thought, well, I can't be part of the problem. And if I don't talk about it, I'm being part of the problem. So I need to talk about it, and I need to talk about my perspective and my views. And so started talking about it on LinkedIn, started really being consistent on LinkedIn about it, started sharing perspectives and views. And then, I kind of, Rarity evolved into Hannah Awonuga Limited. And so now I kind of do speaking. I do a number of speaking. I do quite a lot of work with LinkedIn and other organizations, kind of using my voice through my lived experience to tell stories, not only my stories, but other people's stories as well.
So at this point in your career, when George Floyd was murdered, had you already navigated into the DEI space?
Yeah,
okay.
I was already in DEI. So that was interesting.
How long before that had you navigated?
So I was in DEI about a year before that.
Okay.
Yeah, but obviously before I was officially in DEI, I was in a cultural role, so looking after colleague experience, so really around kind of organizational culture, so not named DEI, but actually looking at very much around inclusion and culture and empowerment. And I was in that for a number of years before that. So officially DEI the year before kind of George Floyd, but in culture for a number of years before that, and then also in leadership roles a number of years before that. So obviously my career spanned 17 years. So kind of as soon as I became a leader, DEI was on the agenda, and then formally moved into kind of culture before moving into DEI.
You were with Barclays for 17 years. What made you stay with one organization for so long?
Opportunity. I did 8 different roles, had different opportunities to do different things. I had my children there. I was well respected, well regarded in the organization. I progressed. I felt a sense of belonging, because actually I felt like as much as I was giving to the organization, in some ways I was getting back. They paid for my degree. I did a degree, sponsored degree. I kind of feel like at that time I was progressing at a really steady rate, and I was fulfilled in my roles, and I knew I wanted to progress, and the opportunity to progress was there. It's not like that for everybody. I'm not the poster child for any organization, but that was my experience. But I know that is not the experience of everybody, but that was my experience.
So it sounds like it was like a family to you in a sense. I mean, because you started there so young as well, I can kind of understand that growth, that journey together. Would you say?
No, I wouldn't call it a family, because actually I don't really like that analogy, because work is work. right? There was an exchange, right? I was working and there was an exchange there. However, there was opportunity. And so it was, and I suppose I tell everybody today, go where the opportunities are, stay where the opportunities are, stay where your values, stay where you have a voice, stay where you can share that voice. And so all of them things happened while I was there. And I enjoyed it. I had made loads of amazing friends, mentors, sponsors. But as with anything, I am very self-aware around kind of my own strengths, my abilities, what I want to achieve. And so when I then decided what I wanted to do next in my career, I knew that actually strategically it was really important for me to step out of that, that structure now and go and work in an organization that was on a journey that, wanted to build something. And so that's how I kind of moved from Barclays. But I don't really class it as a family because, work is an exchange. But I did have opportunity. Absolutely.
How did you know it was time to move on?
I didn't. It wasn't like there wasn't, oh, I need to leave now. I think it was about, like I say, as a career coach, when you have to go where the stretch is. You have to understand your long-term career aspirations. I often talk about my career like my own business. So I'm the CEO of Hannah PLC, and that's how I run my career. And so I decided that actually, in order for me to grow and stretch, I needed to go into an organization that I can have impact, that I can build, that I can grow my own capabilities. And so, I was, part of a group D&I team, and I knew that I wanted to be head of D&I. I wanted to run a business. And so the opportunity came to me, and it was an awesome opportunity. And so I took it. And so here I am.
Love that. I love that. Okay, I'm going to rewind you a little bit because you already touched on LinkedIn, and totally I will get to your question in the right segment, So, and by the way, if you've got questions for Hannah that you want to ask, just drop it in the comments and I'll get to as many of them as I can. Because I got loads of questions for Hannah here, okay? So you mentioned LinkedIn. So you said at the time of George Floyd, and George Floyd's murder happened, everybody talking about Black Lives Matter, and you had something to say and you wanted to say it. So you jumped onto LinkedIn and you started saying it there. Now, at that point, were you already active on LinkedIn or were you kind of starting out?
I was just starting out. I had like 500 people on my LinkedIn profile. That's how I started.
What made you think this was the best platform for you to talk about it?
I felt like if you're going to have conversations, you should have them with people that can influence and have decision-making power, and that is where LinkedIn is. So for me, it was about it isn't necessarily a social. It's not a social conversation. It's not a conversation you have in the pub. These are serious conversations, and so you want to have them with people who actually can go and who have decision-making power, who have influence. And so, if I can go onto LinkedIn and talk about something, and a HR director is listening or reading my post, or a CEO is reading my post, and then they go back into their business and actually change a behavior because of something I've wrote, that is impact. So that is why LinkedIn was the best place, because actually this is about systemic long-term change across all D&I metrics. And so that's why I felt that LinkedIn was like the best place to do that.
I love that. So it was a strategic move in a sense.
Yeah, I think so. At the time, it wasn't about followers. It isn't still about followers. It was more about, I had something to say, and I felt like keeping quiet was worse than saying something and getting it wrong. And so I just told myself that if I ever say anything, I'll just pretend I'm talking to myself. And so I write for myself. I write my thinking. People say, Hannah, you write like you speak. That is my style. I have a crafted tone of voice, and it's my tone of voice. And so, I have people say, oh, would you, can you help me with your post? Can I? No, I don't want any of that, because I have a tone of voice that's important to me. And that seems to be what resonates when you actually talk from, within.
Yeah. And that's exactly how I know you didn't do it intentionally at the beginning, but that's exactly how you build a personal brand, through putting across your thoughts, your views, your voice, and people getting to know you. So in the process of doing that, you've gone from 500 to like 62,000 plus followers, and you've been recognized as a LinkedIn top voice in this area of career space, diversity, equality, and inclusion, which is absolutely brilliant. So I describe that as being visible. So this is when I talk about being visible. This is what the show is about. This is about women owning their voices, like you've done, making that decision to, I'm not going to keep quiet. I'm going to share the things on my heart. So how do you define visibility? What does that word mean to you?
Great question. I think for me, visibility is about showing up as your authentic self. So it's about understanding who you are, what do you want to say, what do you have to say, and then leading with that. And so, visibility is about being consistent and showing up. Not shying away from difficult conversations, not shying away from comments, being able to engage in dialogue. That's what visibility means to me.
Absolutely. So visibility at work, do you think about that differently than you do visibility on a platform like LinkedIn, or are the two to you like go hand in hand?
Absolutely, they're interchangeable. I saw that. I suppose I didn't even expect that. I think that was the biggest thing for me, was so many times people would walk up to me in my old role and just say, I loved your post. And I'd be like, oh yeah, I forgot that I posted that, like the worlds were crossing over. But in a way that actually I think people haven't even woken up to. Yeah. It increased my visibility in my last organization almost 300 times. I was being approached by people who would be like, Hannah, I follow you on LinkedIn. I didn't know them from nowhere. I would then have our kind of senior leaders engage in my posts. Like, it then became, then really intertwined, and even, to a point where I had to speak to media relations and broker this conversation about who am I outside of work and who am I inside of work, and how and when do they intersect. And I always say that what ended up happening is that I built a personal brand that then benefited the organization that I worked for hugely. All of a sudden, this Black woman is now talking on D&I topics, and whenever they clicked in, and it was that brand that I was connected to. So people would then send me emails and say, "Oh, Hannah, I'm thinking about applying because, it looks like this place is such an inclusive place because you're up there, and so it was so interesting, and now it's really what it's done. It's really opened my eyes to the whole notion of employer branding and just how you utilize your staff to build your brand in a really organic way, because it then transpired that everything I was doing outside of work just had a knock-on effect. It was like free publicity for the organization, right? I didn't look at that because I didn't mind that, because I had a mission and a goal. And so as long as I was fulfilling my mission, as long as I was fulfilling my goal, and as long as I was given the freedom and space to do that, which I was, it hugely benefited that organization and any organization that I'm connected to, because now I have this big brand. So anything I post, anything I talk about, anywhere I go, any places that I speak, people see me, and then they associate that with the brand. They associate it with my own brand, Hannah Awonuga. I believe that is now its own brand, but then also with the brand that I am connected to, like Knight Frank.
Yes, I think this is like so spot on. And this is what I wrote in an article sometime last year about the rise of employee influencers, and this is exactly it. Is as an employee, you building your brand outside of your company, your organization, ends up benefiting your company and organization anyway, while it's benefiting you. So it's a win-win. So companies that are like, oh, don't post on LinkedIn, and super guarding their employees when it comes to how they show up on social media, are absolutely missing a trick. So if you're one of those companies listening to this, stop it right now. Stop
You
it.
know what? It's such an important point, right? But there's so many layers to it. So absolutely, social media can be a great tool to get voices out there, diverse voices out there, and can build brands and can benefit organizations. But there is a misuse of it, and so I think that there was a trust between me and the organization. There was an awareness of me on what I'm saying and how I'm being portrayed. And so there's I think it's important because we've seen in recent months about how people use social media, and actually it doesn't have the same effect, as quite a negative effect. So there's social media guidelines in organizations. I absolutely believe in them. There's media relations teams, absolutely believe in them. You have to work with these teams because it's not just about having freedom of speech and saying what you want, because you are connected to your employer, and people have been sacked. You read it all the time for things that they post. It's about really cultivating what you want to say, who you are, and then, being strategic about how you execute that.
Definitely. Yeah, there's definitely the need to have guidelines in place. My background is communication. So I worked in comms. So it is that whole thing of work with the comms team, but give your employees like
Space.
freedom within boundaries, but not like, don't make it a comms department responsibility to just kind of churn out corporate jargon that no one's interested in, because that does not build your employer brand. So anyway, let me go off on a thing on that.
I suppose the last thing to say on that is that from an attraction perspective, people want to hear from people. So, people want to hear from your people around what's it like to work here? How much freedom and space do you get to be able to be yourself? And that is a deciding factor for a lot of people when they're looking for new roles, when they're looking for organizations to work with. So having your employees on social media talking not only about the company, but really talking about what they care about actually has an impact on attraction.
Definitely. And on that note of talking about what you care about, I noticed it maybe a few months ago. I don't know if you were doing it from before that, but I noticed that you share scriptures, on a Sunday. And I know that you're a Christian, you're a practicing Christian. So at some point you made the decision that you were going to incorporate this more openly in your on LinkedIn. So what happened? Like, what made you come to that decision? And were you afraid of like any kind of backlash? Because people say, don't talk about politics, don't talk about religion, don't talk about whatever on LinkedIn. And here you are posting scriptures openly, and you're in a senior role in an organization. How do you marry the two?
Yeah, so I differentiate religion from faith. So that's my first thing, right? I practice my faith. And so I suppose a few months ago, I was kind of thinking, well, I've been given a platform, and if I know anything about the scripture, I know that actually if I'm given a platform, then actually I should use that platform to at least share my own beliefs and my own faith. And so the Sunday scriptures are interesting. I didn't really give it much thought. So it wasn't like, right, I'm now going to be posting scriptures. I think there was just one Sunday I was thinking to myself, it was something on my heart. It was really important to me. And I just thought, like, the world feels really tough at the moment, like in so many different ways, cost of living, war, all of these different things. And so I wanted to share something that I felt had lifted my spirit, in the hope that actually it might lift somebody else's spirit. So, I'm not forcing it down anybody's throat. I do it once a week. It's just something I do. I don't write a lot of commentary off the back of it. It's there and I post it. And I suppose it's just for recognizing that things are tough for people at the moment in various different ways. And sometimes people want, to know that other people are going through things, or wanting to know that, I suppose it's about just helping people on that journey and giving people that sense of community. And what I found on LinkedIn is that, people didn't talk about their religion at all, and I knew that there were some Christian people on. I knew that there were, people that are actually, doing amazing things in the church, but didn't ever post about it on LinkedIn. And so I wanted to start. I thought, look, if they see me, maybe that will give them a bit of encouragement to do that. And I'm not, I believe that everybody has a personal relationship with God and a personal faith that they believe in. So it's not about me going, say, you have to now believe what I believe. It's just about me saying, this is what I believe, and this is what has helped me. And I think in the workplace, one of the things, it was a bit of a light bulb moment for me. I was having a conversation with somebody, and I ended it by saying, by God's grace. And I paused because I was like, oh, should I say that in the workplace? Am I allowed to say that? And then I thought, well, that's who you are. And so, my Sunday posts and is just part of who I am. So I talk about diversity and inclusion and culture and belonging. And so I felt like, well, Hannah, you're not really practicing what you preach if you don't bring your whole self. And so that's where it's come from. And I appreciate that it resonates with people, and, it will be something that I will do for as long as I want to do it. And it's something that's important to me, that is just allowing me to be my whole self in every aspect of my life. And my career is a big aspect of my life.
I totally get that, because I think I had a similar kind of realization maybe about 6 months ago, where I was like, this whole, okay, I have a platform and I'm a Christian as well. I love Jesus, So now I was like, actually, my faith, and like you, I distinguish between religion and faith. I don't have religion, I have faith. I have Jesus, I was like, my faith is actually part of my personal brand. And I preach personal branding. And here's a huge element of who I am that I don't talk about that much publicly. That's got to change, because I'm not being authentic. I'm not bringing my whole self to the LinkedIn table, so to speak. And that was the point where it was like, actually, yeah, this is me. Like you, is like, I'm not shoving it down your throat, but like it, love it, I don't care. This is me, So I think there's something really liberating, isn't it, when you can just bring yourself to the forefront on a platform like LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't question. People were like, oh, but are you worried about your career? Are you worried about what it might do? But I found the question confusing, because why would it be? I'm employed to do a job. I do my job well. I am considered. I am strategic. And so, but it's just who I am. So, I just, I'm sensible. Everyone should be sensible, right? In anything you post. And I want to make sure that I don't ever come across like I am, trying to do something for an agenda. Like I said, it was for me. Everything I do on LinkedIn is for me. So I feel like I'm talking to myself, my younger self, my older self, myself now. And so, yeah, it is so liberating, and it's so freeing, actually, because it just means I can be Hannah. And, I don't profess to being this really religious. I say it to my friends all the time, I have my own personal relationship with God, and that that does look different to how it might show up in other people. But this is my little way, and I'm comfortable with this way, and this way works for me.
Tola wants to know if you attend Victory House.
No.
Wrong, Hannah, Tolu. Okay, so in relation to visibility and your private life, what's your take on that? Because I noticed that I think you're a little bit similar to me. I'm not sure, because I had to hunt hard to find posts about I know you've got 3 children, you've got two boys and a daughter, and I know you're married and stuff. I had to hunt hard on LinkedIn and even Instagram. Then I found a photo of your husband on Instagram. I was like, cool, and then I didn't see anything on your kids, kind of thing. So I'm getting from that you kind of keep a line between what you make public and what you keep private. Is that right?
Yeah, it's such a funny story about that, actually, because I was talking to my husband about that recently because he said to me that somebody brought to his attention that when you type Hannah Awonuga into Google, the first suggestion is Hannah Awonuga's husband. So we had a little joke about, like, people are trying to find you, babes. Like, they're trying to find out who my husband is. And we laughed about that. But my personal life and my home life, like, I share what I'm comfortable sharing. I'm married and my husband is, we've been together for a number of time, for a long time, been married for 12 years. Have 3 children. My eldest is going to be 16. My middle son is 12. My daughter is just turned 5 on Monday. My daughter has a genetic disorder, so she requires extra care. But actually, what I post is about me and my work and D&I, and sometimes that crosses over, as a working parent or as a mother who's also a carer, or a working mother who's also dyslexic and now in a senior position. And so all of these sometimes intersect. But at the same time, my family is important to me. And so keeping that safe as well is important. And the other day we were in Blue Water and I was with my kids and somebody walked up to me and said, "Oh, are you Hannah from LinkedIn?" And my kids thought it was so cool, but it just was like, wow, these lines can sometimes blur. And so just be conscious of that.
So is it a deliberate decision to keep photos of your kids off social media? And
yeah, it is. I think yeah, it is, because they have a choice. Like my eldest has got Instagram. Like they have a choice to when they want to put their pictures out and when they want to showcase themselves, and that is all a choice that I want them to make, not one that I should make for them.
Oh, I get that. I'm the same. I rarely talk about my kids unless it's relevant, and so there is the people like, "Oh, but you're always out there, you're visible, you share everything." I'm like, "I don't share everything. I have a private life." I share what I want you to know. So, and I guess you have to kind of protect that boundary, especially someone like you. You're super busy, you've got a lot going on, and it's like, how do you switch off? How do you find time to recharge and find space for yourself in the midst of everything you have going on?
Oh my God, that is like a golden question. If you have the answer for that, like, please put it in the chat, because yeah, no, still not able to switch off. Still I feel like my work plays a big role in my life. And so there's probably a balance that I need to come to. I have a word for every year, right? So I do a vision board, I put it on my phone, and then I have a word. Last year's word was abundance. The year before was elevation. And this year is ease, for the exact question that you've asked me. Is because, sometimes, especially if you're Black or ethnically diverse in the corporate space, you are chasing the grade or the role or the promotion or something, like you are constantly in this race to achieve. And that sometimes comes from, it's coming from a place of, like I said, scarcity. Maybe you didn't have it before, now you want it. But this year my word is ease, because actually I want to sit and embrace all of what God has given to me. My new job, just about to complete in our house, all of these things. So instead of trying to chase, I really want to just start to think more about well-being, start to think more about health, start to think more about how can I enjoy kind of everything that I've been working hard to achieve.
You feel like you've arrived at your destination?
I'm not sure about if I've arrived at my destination. I don't know if the destination is that where is that? Like, what is that? I think it's more about I am enjoying the journey as I go on, and in that journey, sometimes you have to take a seat and enjoy the sunshine. And I feel like for a long time I wasn't. I was like, right, journey, we're on the go. Get in the car, put the seatbelt on, we are going. And so this year I really want to just enjoy the sunset a little bit, as they say. That's very cliche, sorry, but you know, enjoy that, what all of that. So like, you know, my job is going really well, great people, great organization. You know, my home, my son's preparing for GCSEs, giving him a bit more of my attention, my daughter, my middle son, my husband, but also my voice. You know, like I've found an established voice. I do loads for LinkedIn. So LinkedIn flew me to New York last year to speak at Talent Connect. That was awesome. I met Michelle Obama last year. That was awesome. So just really enjoying the experiences of the work that I've done, I would say.
I love that. And I guess all that experience in terms of your voice and LinkedIn, a platform, is not, you didn't think that would happen, did you? When you started out on this journey to I'm just going to share my thoughts out loud on LinkedIn. Are you surprised at where that journey is taking you?
Oh yeah. I was in August, I was having a look at my analytics, and I'd reached 6 million impressions in 12 months. 6 million in 12 months. Like how, like where would you ever get that reach as an individual person? Sorry. You know, so I'm in awe sometimes of the reach or the messages that I get, or the people that are impacted by it, that what I say, or if they've heard me, or if I've been on a course. I'm just in awe of kind of that impact, because you know, I've said a few times, my resignation posts hit 500,000 people. That's the power of a personal brand. What if I had something bad to say? Like, right? That would have the same effect, but I had great things to say, so that was a huge benefit to the organization. So I think, that just, I never in a million years would I've imagined kind of starting to write about my own personal experiences and feelings would get me to this point where now recognized as, you know, my voice is recognized for the work that I do.
I love that. That is fantastic. And that is a brilliant place to end on, because that yours is a voice that we definitely need, that we want to hear more of. That, you know, I'm sure everybody listening right now, if they plug in even more to your work, it's going to benefit their lives positively in some way. So, and I celebrate you for stepping up to the challenge of being visible and just putting yourself out there for the rest of us to benefit from. Thank you.
No worries at all. Thank you so much for inviting me. And yeah, I love what you do. Honestly, I love what you do. And so you inspire me. And I bought your book. I was like, I need to get serious about this visibility piece. So, you know, thank you for all the resources that you share, because it's helped me along the way as well.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. So if we want to connect with you, is it via LinkedIn to go and find
That is a silly question. Connect with me on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn now. Press the connect button, follow. You know, International Women's Day is around the corner. So, you know, definitely from a speaking perspective, love to share my perspective and voice. And I have been doing it for many years. So yeah, excited about this year.
Oh, brilliant. That is awesome. Well, you heard her. Do go and reach out to Hannah. You can find her right here on LinkedIn. If you're tuning in on Instagram, head over to LinkedIn and find her. And of course, reach out if you want her to speak at your event. Don't wait till March. Do it now. She's brilliant. So, Hannah, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us.
No worries at all. Thank you.
All right. Okay, so we are going to end the session here, and I want to take a few seconds to say thank you to everybody who tuned in. I don't think I could pull in all the comments from the feed, but Elizabeth, Timmy, Toluka, everybody else, Janet, Nafisa, Ishia, everybody who tuned in and wrote in the comments, thank you so much for being here with us. Please do go and check out Hannah. Please do follow her. Let me know your takeaway in the comments. What's the biggest thing that you're taking from this conversation if you've listened to this live? And if you're listening to this later on the podcast, reach out as well and share with us what your biggest takeaway is. But for now, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Start Being Visible. I'm going to be back here next week at the same time of 6 o'clock UK time with another fabulous edition and another fabulous guest. So with that, thank you, good night, and I'll see you back here next week. All right, take care.